Well, a temporary hold on Illinois' law being enforced after a Southern District judge issued that temporary injunction, preliminary injunction. The case obviously means that people can go and buy firearms and certain capacity magazines at their local store while the case continues to go through the process. This obviously is in the Southern District, and the state has filed for a stay. What does all this mean? Where are we at with this case? And how are other cases across the state playing out? Somebody who's plugged into all of this and more has been in this fight for years is Todd Vandermyde, and he joins us now with Springfield's Morning News on 97 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Todd, I guess let's just get right into it. Thanks for taking time with me this morning. And what's your reaction? What are you hearing out there on the ground?
It's a good day. It was a really good day on Friday, and St. Stephen, as we're starting to call him, issued an injunction against the state and basically told the state, no, you can't enforce this law. And the state is pretty upset by it. And I think they're taking a bit of an arrogant attitude. If you read the stay request that they asked, they're just like, you got it wrong and the other judges up north got it right. And I'm not sure that's the appropriate tact to take in this case.
Yeah, so when you look at the Southern District of Illinois, Stephen McGlynn, the federal judge there, hearing arguments, this obviously was April 12th, which was months after the law was enacted. And, listening to those arguments, you can kind of predict a bit of what McGlynn was going to be doing with this case. But talk about, I guess, the delay here and what ultimately happens next with the stay. Is there going to be a delay and, having filings go back and forth and then maybe a hearing about the stay? Is that why the state seems to have leapfrogged over the district, the Southern District?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is the equivalent of a temper tantrum from a 3-year-old with the state. And I don't think they're doing their best lawyering, which I will take incompetent opponents every day of the week. And so what we've got here is they, at 11:45 on Friday night, while we were all celebrating, they asked for a stay. Okay. And when the judge did not grant them their stay at 8 o'clock on Monday morning, they had their temper tantrum. The judge on Monday issued an order saying that our side has until the 8th to respond to the state's request, a 1 week. Now, if you look at all the times the state has asked for delay after delay after delay in filing things, you would think that a 1 week time period for our lawyers to marshal their arguments against the state's request is a very reasonable. Well, no, they weren't happy with that. So they ran to court on Tuesday and filed a motion, an emergency appeal with the Court of Appeals. They had already filed their notice that they were going to appeal to the Seventh Circuit. Fine. But now they're doing this thing called a Rule 8 motion. And all the attorneys I'm talking to, I mean, outside of our representation within this case, are saying that the state is just abusing this Rule 8 piece, that they are out over their skis, that what they're claiming is that by the judge taking a week to deal with these issues and that the state has raised, that it is a pocket veto or constructively denying their request for a stay, and therefore they get to leapfrog Judge McGlynn, St. Stephen, and go straight to the Court of Appeals. And I don't think the court's going to buy that. I mean, it's hard to predict what the courts are going to do, but I think that their arguments are bordering on specious. And if you remember in the Heller decision, Judge Scalia sat there and said, some have made the argument bordering on the frivolous. I think we have now seen the frivolous.
We're talking with Todd Vandermyde. He is a gun rights advocate, has been in this space fighting these battles in courts and at the State House, and obviously a lot of moving pieces here, Todd, but top line is the preliminary injunction is in place statewide. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the local challenges that are still lingering as well, and how at least the Naperville case could be considered by the U.S. Supreme Court. A small part of that could be considered by the U.S. Supreme Court. But what are you hearing like from gun stores across the state? Did they have they had a busy week in the past 6 days?
Oh yes, there were. There's a couple of gun stores that I stay particularly in touch with. One of them said they had their biggest weekend ever, and there is, and part of the problem is the state police have been telling dealers they can't have inventory on hand, even to service law enforcement sales who are exempt under the law. And so the shorthand is that some of the dealers don't have a lot of inventory on hand to be able to sell. And so I was at a gun store yesterday, and he just got in a pile of firearms to restock his shelves and all that. So yeah, the gun stores, things are moving again. There are some stores that are waiting for an official word from the state police. Let me tell all the dealers up there, that is not going to come. The state police have never wanted to give any advice about any law, whether it be transporting a gun or anything else. They simply refer you back to the statute and said, well, see, this is what it says, without giving you an answer. So there may be a few dealers out there who are holding back because, you know, we are getting some reports that the state police are giving erroneous information out there. We'll be following up on that. I would really hate to see a contempt citation issued to the state police for failure to follow this judge's injunction.
Well, and it's interesting because, you know, the state seeming to leapfrog McGlynn after asking McGlynn for the stay and trying to get the Seventh Circuit to put that stay in place. But McGlynn's giving due process, right? I mean, isn't that what the judiciary is supposed to do, is to give due process to both sides of this equation?
Well, you look at this, I mean, he took several months to come down with this injunction from the time we filed. So there's certainly, the state had its day, and now that the judge has had a hearing and heard the sides, and both sides have presented evidence, even when the state presents wrong evidence, he issued his ruling, and now, you know, a week is too much for them to tolerate, because I think what's really going on is they are peed off at what they tried to stop. Remember, you know, Morgan, Pritzker, everybody set up the enactment of this thing to be done Johnny on the spot to stop a run on gun stores. They'd seen it happen in other states. They didn't want it to happen again. So now they've got this. But yeah, the other thing is they've got the Naperville suit to contend with, and you now have a Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, sitting there saying, Naperville, you need to respond to this as to why, you know, they aren't entitled to an injunction. I don't know that they're going to take up that case. I don't know that that case is ripe just yet. But remember, earlier this summer, the Supreme Court, you know, gave a pointed finger to the second district, where they were, you know, our side was winning injunctions at the district court, and then the Court of Appeals was summarily issuing stays without any reason. And Justice Thomas and Justice Alito pointedly said, you can't be doing that. And I think we're kind of in that mode here with the Naperville case. And it would be very, very interesting if Justice Barrett issued a injunction against the village in Naperville. And if she does that, I think that is a very big tell. I think if she doesn't do it, it's the case just isn't right. But, you know, the Illinois case could be one that gets to the Supreme Court one way or another.
Well, and with the trajectory of all of these things, I mean, at least with the Supreme Court, that's just on the question of, can we have a preliminary injunction in place while this plays out? That's not on the merits in all of this. Even the Southern District case, they still have to deal with the merits of all this, right? I mean,
Correct.
so this is far from over, but as it stands right now, gun sales are allowed at gun stores across the state, with the exception of places like in Naperville.
Yeah, Naperville, because they have a local ordinance, is the outlier here. I don't see many other villages running to go do this. When Naperville first tried it and there was a push, if you, I listened in on a couple of village council meetings, and one astute alderman in a small town sat there and said, "Why don't we just let Naperville fight this out? We'll see what it looks like at the end of the day, instead of us spending all this money and getting caught up in this whole racket." So yeah, these are interlocutory issues. They are not the final determination. Doesn't mean that I mean, by the time the Seventh Circuit gets done, I mean, the Seventh Circuit yesterday just issued a briefing schedule on this, and this briefing schedule runs through August. So it'll be very interesting to see how soon they grapple. I mean, look at Naperville. Naperville filed in the Court of Appeals in February. They turned around, and the state and the Seventh Circuit issued their denial without comment sometime around April 18th, if memory serves me correct. I mean, that took a while to go. Now, remember, unlike California or New York, we're not dealing with a ban that's been in place for years. We're dealing with a ban that was just enacted, much like Washington is. And therefore, the status quo for the state would be that these guns have been allowed for 60 years. That's the status quo, not the new reset where they're verboten. So I think that Judge McGlynn has got this right. I think the state is stamping their feet on a bunch of this stuff, and it's going to get more interesting. But I mean, I'll ask you, you were in the courtroom. Whose position would you rather be in, the state's or ours, with that judge?
Well, as of right now, the gun owners in the state of Illinois are on the offensive, and the state is on the defensive. So, Todd Vandermyde, greatly appreciate it. That's all the time we've got. We'll definitely be talking again soon. Freedom's Steel, if you want to check him out on YouTube as well. Greatly appreciated as always, and expert in this space. We'll definitely talk again soon, all right?
Hey, guys, look forward to it.
Springfield's Morning News.